couple of months after Poltergeist, the Commodore 64 hit the market in 1982. And in 1983, its price was $299. Well, the Commodore 64 is back, the Commodore 64 Ultimate, and it's selling today at $299. This is not a knockoff, not a copy that we've been getting all these years. This is the original brand of Commodore coming back. The original licenses, the original products. And this is all being headed by the new CEO of Commodore, Chris Simpson. I know him as Pinfrantic or Retro Recipes. And I watched his YouTube channel quite a bit a few years ago when I heard him talk about his KIT, like KIT and Knight Rider application, where we'd have devices that would interact with him like KIT did off the TV show. And I thought that was really cool. But he is an Internet of Things guy. He likes marrying retro tech with current tech, making it work, making it exciting, making it fun. And he is in charge of Commodore. So I'm really curious where he's going to take the brand. He's likely going to take it in the brand into an area where he's the most familiar in, the Internet of Things stuff. But maybe he's just doing it because he wants to relive help everyone relive the retro of the 80s. And he's brought back the heart and soul. People from the original Commodore from the 80s. These are guys in their 70s. And I keep on thinking of Space Cowboys with Clint Eastwood. And those where the younger team was giving the guys, the older guys, some insures. So if you haven't seen Space Cowboys, it's about a satellite with old technology. No one today in the current year knows how to fix that technology, and the satellite needs to be fixed. So they bring in experts by the time during that time when that technology was built. So Space Cowboys, Clint Eastwood. It's a funny movie, but that's what I keep on thinking when I see this with this team that Chris Simpson has surrounded himself with. And people are investing, right? Chris has a lot of credibility because he brought back the original heart, the original soul. And the way they're trying to get investment, well, they're trying to do everything up on the up and up, so there's some slowdowns on how to do the investment. But Chris has been talking about a lot of the licensing. We're having the licensing to be a flat fee of 6.4% of revenue, which is very low relative to what it used to be. But you'll find that a lot of guys that are in the Commodore community that will be using the Commodores, developing on it, advocating it, they're not doing this for the money. They're doing it for the love of the technology, the challenge of the technology. The Commodore community is very unique in terms of how they are very supportive of each other. And they love to take on the challenges of making the Commodore 64, an old computer of the 40 years ago, to do really good tricks. Things that if the Commodore had those tools back then 40 years ago, the Commodore would have been the most popular computer from the 80s to the early 2000s. Quite confident that after seeing a lot of the development tools. So it's just insane how well dedicated this community is. It's not like in other development communities where, well, I'm not going to write any code unless I can make money off of it. So they don't have any of that in that community. But there are challenges for Commodore coming back, the brands coming back. Like there's a major IP fragmentation. They have their IP, Commodore IP, scattered all over in archives all over the internet. There's also previous commitments. There's something called the Amiga OS that is being licensed on other different computers. So there's that going on. So they have to pull that in. I'm really not sure how they're going to deal with all that IP management. It's just insane. That's like a big project on its own. And then there's also the low-cost alternatives like the Commodore 64. If people don't have that retro feeling, but they want the challenges, they might decide to go to something like the Raspberry Pi. Like if you played around with the Raspberry Pi, it gives a lot of the challenge. It has a simple architecture. You can get access to the hardware very easily. You can make it do a lot of interesting tricks. But not sure where Commodore is going to go with this. Like, I love Commodore. I developed on the Commodore 64 in my youth. It really was what guided me into engineering school. Though I don't do computer engineering now, I now do more business engineering and things around human performance and business performance, but still using that engineering mindset, still using things that I learned when programming on a Commodore 64. Same ideas, different way of explaining them. But when I think about the Commodore 64, I think about Pet Cemetery, where you're bringing something back from the dead and it just does not come out right. Like, we've seen that with resurrected brands, like TV shows that were rebooted, superhero shows that were rebooted, fashions, things like that. Things don't come back into their entirety. Like, for instance, an old toy from the 80s comes back, like those old Transformers. You touch it, it doesn't feel the same, doesn't look the same. It just looks off. It's like getting that uncanny valley effect with nostalgia. It just does not resonate well. And so I'm wondering about with the Commodore 64, is that going to resonate well? Is that going to be is it going to be accepted, or is there going to be a rejection that, oh, this does not satisfy the nostalgia, this is not what I remember it to be? Now, even though the Commodore is coming back, the brand is coming back, it makes me wonder what really is coming back. Is it just the hardware? Because I hope it's not just the hardware. I hope it's not just the software in the development community. I hope it's more that's coming back. I hope the ideas in the 80s on how you approach technology and how you designed it and how you implemented solutions comes back. And if Commodore can work its way into the mainstream and challenge these current status quo that we have with how we're doing things today, I think that would do a lot more good than bad. Because there are some things we're doing today that I'm really beginning to question, especially after seeing the power of artificial intelligence and a lot of the development tools that we have available today. Kind of makes me question that status quo of how we do things today with our technology. Back then, in the 80s, we had dedicated chips, and we're still doing it today. Back then, we had dedicated for processing, dedicated for sound, dedicated for graphics, and today we're doing the exact same thing. And people forget just how old that idea is and how entrenched that is into the tech community of doing things that way for optimization. That was coming back from computers from the 80s, like the Commodore, the Atari, IBM. It's all these computers were doing that sort of thing. But even the idea of being totally operational and being able to connect to almost everything and being expandable and not having limits on how much you expand, it was just primarily your imagination. That was being done in the 80s with a lot of devices, especially the Commodore 64. And you don't see that much today. Oh, there's standards like making sure there's USB ports, make sure there's the B or the C type ports, make sure that you have Wi-Fi and things like that. But you're still constrained to a box, not nearly as expandable as those computers were in the 80s. And we really need to get back to seeing things like that, making things more expandable, right? Makes things more modular, less expensive, and it also opens up opportunities for innovation and especially for getting major boosts in speed relative to the dollar you're paying. And in the 80s, relative to now, in the 80s, you had access to your hardware. You could go right to the hardware. You could change the memory, the registers in the hardware. Today, there are so many layers you got to go through, so much security you got to go through. There are reasons for that, right? Primarily to facilitate development, to manage the code, to make sure you don't break something when you change code. There were reasons. But today we have artificial intelligence. I could take my code, make it a large language model, have the AI monitor to make sure when I'm modifying and making patches that I don't break the solution. So why do I need all these different layers? Which every time there's a layer, I get a hit in performance. Like, why do I have that today? Right? So it kind of makes me wonder about a lot of the paradigms we're doing today for development. If we just took a step back and looked back 40 years ago, there were things that we did for certain reasons, but those reasons may no longer be valid today. Like encapsulation at the level that we're doing, abstraction at the level that we're doing, having these multiple layers. Does it make sense today based on the tools we have, the development tools and the artificial intelligence that we have? There's also what I liked about especially with the Commodore 64, is that if you didn't like your operating system for the computer, well, you could turn it off and replace it with your own. And you could swap between operating systems. That just with putting a value in memory, and that was it. And that was a pretty nice trick. I like that. I liked the idea where you would have programs stored on ROM, read-only memory, and then rather than loading it off of a disk, I liked that idea. Like that was cool. Like I remember with Microsoft's BASIC interpreter that was coded on a chip in the Commodore 64. I was rather surprised to see Microsoft when I look back. Wait, did I remember that right? And today we have that sort of idea too, especially with the flash ROMs that we have for our smart devices, for our phones, for our TV sets, laptops. Right, so we're using ideas from the 80s, that had certain assumptions, and maybe we should start considering, maybe we should be looking back at those assumptions, see if what we can change. And what I did like about Commodore, because you had total access to the hardware, you could make it do tricks. Like there were no limits with what you could do. Like when people today, engineers today, look at requirements, well, those are things that you can't really work around. But in computers in the 80s, like the Commodore 64, restriction. You're only allowed 8 objects on the screen that can float around and do things. Well, you're allowed 8 objects, but you could trick the eye and trick the user into thinking there's 64 objects on the screen, because you had total control over the hardware where things were painted. So when something's painting, you could say, well, after it's been painted, after it's shown on part of the screen, the line that's painting everything on the screen, it's not reached to a certain point yet, so you can move the object to that point, and then it magically appears in 2 places with no flicker. Not like in the Atari 2600, there was no flicker. So there were a lot of tricks like that, as long as you knew how those objects moved on the screen. There were a lot of tricks you could do with the Commodore 64. And we lose that with the new technology because of all the levels of abstraction, encapsulation, all those layers. And we are stuck in a trap of we need more and more higher processing solutions like chips and accelerators and such to get basic things to work because of all those layers. And it's because every time we change something, it could break something. There's a reason for that, a reason why we have layers. But with large language models today, we can make our solutions in a large language model, go in, have the AI make sure that we don't make a mistake when we make changes through our prompts. We have the tools today. We could change the way our technology is built, how we program it. We could make things simpler. We could have simpler chips, simpler AI chips that require less power, less energy, be more green. less expensive, because if we focus on more simple solutions, simpler solutions tend to be less expensive, they tend to scale more, and they tend to be easier to access and easier to adopt. What's really coming back from Commodore? What's coming back? Is it just the hardware, just the retro, for the community, or these ideas from the 80s are coming back to sort of challenge the status quo of how we do things today 40 years later? And I sure hope it's the latter, because there are so many things today that I'm beginning to question, because we have so many tools, so much good talent, that everything, because of artificial intelligence, because of automation, because of the inexpensive memory and processing power, a lot of the things we're currently doing just seem so outdated.